The Great Depression refers to the challenges faced during the years from 1929 to the 1930s, and understanding this period requires a grasp of its root causes rather than seeing it as a single incident alone. It was not simply one event but a sequence of factors including uneven income distribution, fragile corporate setup, unstable banking sector, vulnerable foreign trade balance, and the inadequate economic knowledge that contributed to its unfolding. The onset of what we refer to as the Great Depression is often linked to 1929's stock market crash. However, there were factors at play during that time. Persistent income disparity during the 1920s played a role in triggering the downturn by widening the wealth gap between affluent individuals and those with lower incomes. The unequal distribution of wealth concentrated economic power in the hands of a few, making the economy vulnerable to the changes in their spending habits. When the wealthy reduced their lavish expenditures, it triggered a decline in demand, leading to business failures, job losses, and downward spiral that deepened the Great Depression. This dependence made it susceptible to shifts in confidence levels and investment returns. Another factor that worsened the economic crisis was the fragile institutional structure of the period. While the rise of holding companies and investment trusts initially made a good economic impression, this created an unstable structure of interconnected companies that were highly vulnerable to a total devaluation of underlying assets and eventual economic collapse. The weak banking system played a critical role in the onset of the Depression. Many independent banks that were not covered by the Federal Deposit Insurance Network were left vulnerable to the cascade effect of the banking failure. As the economy weakened, businesses suffered and banks faced a wave of loan defaults and subsequent declines in asset values. This volatility led to bank runs and a widespread loss of confidence in the financial system, further reducing investment and spending. What is more, the destabilization of the external economic balance after the First World War, the United States was a major creditor country. The continuation of high tariffs and the reliance on foreign loans to balance international accounts increased economic fragility. Over time, the global economy weakened and credit flows diminished. Countries were unable to repay their loans and greatly reduced their imports, leading to a decline in international trade and a contraction in economic activity. Poor management of economic policy during that period prevented the development of effective policies against the crisis. The dominant economic regime advocated balanced budgets, non-intervention in economy, and avoidance of inflation, while policymakers rejected fiscal and monetary measures that could cushion the downturn. In short, the cause of the Great Depression is not a single event but the result of a series of events that are responsible for bringing things to this state. The crash in the stock market remains the symbol of the beginning of the crisis.
The Great Depression wasn't just an economic collapse. It was a profound shift in the culture and the social fabric of America. In the wake of the 1929 stock market crash, unemployment surged and poverty spread like a wildfire. By 1931, over 8 million people were jobless, and the communities were grappling with the unimaginable. In rural areas, drought and failing crops forced thousands to migrate westward, seeking a better life in California. But overcrowded labor markets and harsh living conditions awaited them, amplifying the despair. Cities fared no better. Factories shut down, families lost their homes, and survival became a daily struggle. Despite the challenges, neighbors formed fragile networks of support, sharing food and resources in acts of a quiet resilience. Out of the darkness, a cultural renaissance emerged, fueled by the New Deal. Programs like the Federal Art Project provided jobs for artists, whose work celebrated the dignity of ordinary Americans. Muralists painted vibrant scenes of the everyday life in schools and post offices, creating a legacy of hope and resilience. Photographer Dorothy Lange captured haunting images of poverty and migration, immortalizing the human cost of the Great Depression. These works didn't just document history, they gave a voice to the voiceless. Literature also bore witness to the struggles of the era. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of the Wrath told the story of the Joad family, fleeing the Dust Bowl only to face systematic injustice in California. The novel became an enduring symbol of the Depression's hardships and the resilience of the human spirit. Together, the art, photography, and literature of the 1930s captured the soul of a nation in turmoil, reminding us of our capacity to endure, rebuild, and create even in the darkest times. The Great Depression reshaped not only the economy but the every essence of American identity. Through resilience, creativity, and a commitment to one another, the nation emerged stronger, leaving behind a legacy of hope and perseverance.
The Great Depression, starting in 1929, is conventionally regarded as the most turning point economic event in the 20th century. Its results go far beyond the oncoming collapse of the economy and have influenced the political landscapes and become a grounds for global economic policies for many subsequent years. Probably the most overwhelming result of the Depression was the coming into power of totalitarian regimes, above all in Europe. Economic turmoil acted to enhance instability within Weimar Germany, which the Nazi Party manipulated to its full advantage. The Nazi Party successfully utilized the crisis to extend its public support by promising recovery and a return to national pride during a time of financial instability. This broad range of reforms aimed to reinstate stability, but more importantly, to avoid economic collapse in the future. In the United States, the New Deal of President Franklin Roosevelt transformed relations between the government and the economy. Reforms went from the establishment of the Social Security Administration to the Glass-Steagall Act and other legislation, each tailored to accomplish the threefold goal of providing relief, reforming the banking system, and creating long-term recovery. A major component of these reforms was the establishment of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which insured the depositors' savings against loss and thereby restored confidence in banking. These reforms called for increased intervention by the government during periods of economic slump and asked for the use of public works as well as fiscal policies to stimulate demand. On the international scale, the Depression brought with it a mark that was to last long in the world economy, the collapse of world trade through protectionist measures like tariffs, as also economic nationalism fostered thereby so a fragile economic system. All this led to reduced international cooperation and crumbling international finance. However, the Depression provided a route to the creation of new international economic institutions after World War II, like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, committed to the task of maintaining economic stability and preventing the recurrence on this scale. The effects of this depression can still be felt in the present day. Reforms that took place at this point provided a foundation for economic policy today, especially as far as banking regulation and welfare are concerned. The lessons learned during the Depression have influenced contemporary financial systems, and today's economic policies continue to reflect the need for government intervention during crisis to prevent the kind of widespread instability seen in the 1930s.